Well, hello, and allow me to be the first to welcome you to another fantastic installment of our DM Connect webinar series. We're very pleased to have current dental monitoring users and non-users alike, doctors and team members, all registered for today's presentation. In fact, we have over 200 registrations from 31 different states in the USA, as well as 12 other countries from around the globe. So thank you all for making this webinar series truly a global event. My name is Sean Pemberton, Training and Education Manager for Dental Monitoring North America, and I will be your moderator for today's session, which will be led by the incomparable Dr. Alyssa Carter, entitled How Monitoring My Patients Using Dental Monitoring Helped Me Love My Practice Life. Before I introduce today's presenter, please note that all participant lines have been muted. But if you have a question you'd like to submit, please just jump up and down and wave your arms. Oh, just kidding. Enter your question in the chat provided, and we will address as many questions as time allows at the conclusion of Dr. Carter's presentation. The session will be recorded in its entirety, and an on-demand version will be available using the same link you received following registration. Now, you can take the girl out of Stillwater, but you can't take still water out of the girl, especially during Oklahoma State's tailgating season, which can be a year-round sport. And when she's not out rooting on the OSU Cowboys, she's perfecting the art of the human pyramid with her awesome team at Dr. Alyssa Orthodontics. Together, they serve the people of Sherman, Bonham, and Gainesville, Texas, all wonderful North Texas blue-collar family communities. Dr. Alyssa's higher education journey began with her undergrad physiology and biology degree from, you guessed it, Oklahoma State University, before attending the Texas A&M Baylor College of Dentistry, and then serving as chief resident at the University of Florida Ortho Residency Program, where she was also awarded the AAO Charlie Schultz Resident Scholar Award. Dr. Carter is a member of Ormco Insiders, Shulman Study Group, Orthopreneurs RD, and the New Patient Group Mastermind. She's also a distinguished and highly respected key opinion leader for dental monitoring, Spark, and on-demand orthodontist. In March of 2023, she was recognized by Dental Monitoring as our KOL Educator of the Year, and most recently featured as the cover story in the spring 2023 issue of Orthodontic Practice US magazine, and today's presentation will share many of the highlights from that publication. So ladies and gentlemen, I turn the presentation over to Dr. Alyssa Carter.
Thank you, Sean, for that wonderful introduction. I am happy to be here and look forward to helping and sharing anything with others. And so we'll get started. You've already mentioned the title of the presentation is How to Live Your Practice Life. And for me, that was a huge part of that was using the AI provided by Dental Monitoring. And so if we think about that throughout today's webinar presentation, and you have questions about what exactly that artificial intelligence is and the power of it, feel free, like Sean said, to ask questions, and I'm happy to answer anything that you have at the end. But just so everybody does know, I am a KOL for monitoring, Spark, and ODO. And so I'll get started. And if you think about what the most valuable thing in your practice is, a lot of times if you talk to your accountant, they may say, well, it seems like your supplies you're using are costing a lot, or the certain program, or the decor on your wall in your lobby, or your employees. And really, a lot of those things are assets to our practices instead of liabilities, but the most valuable thing to our practice is something that's not on the P&L statement. And that is something called time. And time affects everything on a profit and loss statement, even though it's not on there. And so a lot of times if we want to evaluate our practices and what's valuable, we need to be thinking about the time put into everything in our practice. And another question I may pose to you as we get started, just to get your minds turning, is what do you strive for year over year in your practice? And I don't think anyone's going to answer this question by saying, I hope I shrink or my practice goes under. But in reality, a lot of us are striving for growth year over year. And so if we define the term growth, it means the process of increasing in physical size. And so when I think about growth in orthodontics, successful growth to many of us may look as, okay, well, I can increase my patient fees, I can increase the number of starts, and that will all result in increased production and therefore increased profit, hopefully. But what else might define successful growth? Well, growth also can be defined as the process of increasing an amount of value or importance. And so I like this definition better for our orthodontic practices, or just as important as the other definition of growth. And if we think about some things that are important, or we can measure an amount or value instead, it's, okay, well, what if I want increased number of days that I can work remotely? What if I want an increased patient outcome, an increased patient experience? What if I want to increase my time management? And so growth to me, successful growth to me was increasing the value of my time. And some people might say, why? And for me, it was the one thing that's consistent every single day between every single person. And I can't change the amount of it. You can't change the amount of it. But what we can do is control and change what we do with the amount that we're given. And so how do we manage this? Well, in orthodontic practice, we try to be very proactive in managing our time rather than reactive. And what do I mean by that? A lot of us have same day starts. We have a pre-call to kind of prepare our patients for their appointments. When patients get their braces on, we spend a little bit of time, sometimes 60 seconds or less, going over everything about this foreign object we just placed in their mouth and how to put wax on something if it breaks. And hopefully they can come back in 8 weeks for a 20 or 30-minute adjustment appointment. And we're going to change their wires and nothing's ever going to be wrong. With aligners, we say, okay, here's 10 trays, come back into our practice in 10 weeks, and everything's going to be perfect, right? Well, the reality is that if you look at your schedule, almost 50% of appointments every single day may be reactive in nature in some form or fashion. And that is from the fact that patients have broken brackets. Maybe a wire came disengaged. Maybe a power chain broke. Maybe an aligner is not seating all the way. Maybe an attachment came off. Now we have to rebond it. Maybe a button came off. Whatever the case is, we're now kind of scattering our workflow to accommodate what we didn't predict, and we're acting reactively compared to what that patient was scheduled for. And in our practice, that makes us feel overwhelmed. It leads to exhaustion. Our team is running around, they're fatigued. I'm seeing patients I didn't plan to see more than once to take care of something, kind of retrack the plan for the day. And so if you think about that feeling of overwhelming, it's usually because we're trying to find balance. And Grant Cardone, and I love Audible, I reference books a lot, but Grant Cardone talks about, instead of finding balance, we need to find abundance. And so how can we find abundance even when we're trying to be reactive in nature and our schedule may be becoming behind? And the first thing you have to do to feel like you're filling everything up and finding this abundance is to define, where am I trying to find balance so I can find abundance instead? And for me, I defined that by people in our practice. And so the 4 buckets were the patients, the team, myself, selfishly, and the business as a whole. And so how can I find abundance in all of these things, even if things go off track or in the midst of our chaotic schedule when appointments are reactive and not always proactive? And so we are here to talk about how to live your practice life. So you can assume that dental monitoring had a huge part of this. And we'll go over a little bit of the history of Dr. Alyssa Orthodontics at the end of this presentation. But remote monitoring and artificial intelligence was kind of my first step into redefining how we can regain control of our everyday and try to make sure our patients are taken care of, our team's taken care of, and that, once again, selfishly, I'm taken care of. So when I first jumped in with dental monitoring, I thought, okay, we'll put our aligner patients on it. We're going to have our patients scan this thing behind the scenes. We'll analyze it, computerize the pictures, and then tell me if something's off track, and I'll go in and kind of talk with my patients or decide what to do. And what I realized is that the report that this AI gives you is far more detailed and way smarter than a human being. And that report gives you 130 plus notifications for over 130 different things that it can detect inside of the mouth, either with aligners, braces, or general hygiene, recession, etc. And I was like, this is really, really powerful with this report. There's so much more we could be doing instead of the way that we're scheduling our patients now. And so what I found is that it changed not just the patient journey to allow them to scan from home and maybe make sure their trays are fitting better, not have to come to the practice much, but it actually changed our entire practice journey. And it changed it so much that I absolutely love getting up and going to work and look forward to seeing our patients that are on our dental monitoring platform. So what have I noticed? And so really in line with what dental monitoring says their 3 pillars of part of their vision is we have to improve the quality of care for our patients, we have to improve the patient experience, and we have to help practices optimize themselves. And for me, that was doing orthodontics like it's never been done before. And the AI allows for that. So I love this perception versus reality, because a lot of times we think that we know what's going on, or we think we understand what happens, or maybe we realize that we don't, but we don't have the true reality of what is. So if we had to take a guess, it'd probably be wrong. So the first thing that the AI will do for your practice, or it did for ours, is help us discover inefficiencies. And this was a result of the report. And it's not something that I signed up to start dental monitoring for, but it's probably the single biggest benefit that helps my practice even every day to this day. So what do I mean by that? When someone scans, you get there's clinical triggers it's looking for, and that's the 130 something parameters that this AI can detect. And that we call those treatment alerts. They're things about treatment that we would want to know about, whether it's good or bad or ugly. Then the AI will give you an opportunity to either send a patient message, a message to your team, or both, or neither. And so the patient messages are messages between us and our patients, like the team and the doctor, and then the team instructions are automated messages to our team from instructions from myself based on the clinical triggers. Well, what are clinical triggers? Just to make this make more sense. Well, 3 of the 130 plus don't need any action. So there's 3 things that could be going well with someone's treatment, and that's it. Their braces are okay, their aligner is okay, and their hygiene's okay. Everything else is something that we would want to know about because it could affect our treatment. And that's everything from an aligner not tracking, an aligner being broken, an attachment coming off, a damaged appliance, etc. Bite blocks coming off, a tooth is hitting an arch wire, it might break. And then obviously if someone starts developing recession, it can tell us, it detects a black triangle. And then also, overbite, overjet, etc. So those are things that the AI can automatically detect for us and report to us. And what we do with those will determine what happens on those next 2 downstreams on the tables. So if we look at the first part of the inefficiencies, I always say the data doesn't lie. If you're in Texas, you might say the data don't lie, like I am, but the data doesn't lie. And there's something called an insights dashboard that DM provides for us. And this dashboard changes every single day, and it's based on the last 30 days history, 90 days history, 180 days history, 360 days history. And it provides real-time views of where your practice is, or what's going well, what's going wrong. And you can instantly see trends in your practice that are escalating or de-escalating, which will help you uncover these inefficiencies. So one of these things in our practice is broken brackets. And so if I took our data and I said, okay, here, what are our broken brackets by tooth number? And this is the pie chart. And if you notice, almost 25% of broken brackets are one tooth. Every color is a different tooth. And then almost 75% are just 6 different teeth. So if I could understand that in my practice and target those, I could decrease 75% or close to it of our broken brackets. And so what do we think that one is? Well, lower right 7. And every single one of my assistants at the time is right-handed. It makes perfect sense. We have a pool of saliva sitting there while we're trying to bond a bracket, not getting good isolation, et cetera. And by the time I come to sit the bracket, that tooth is set up for failure. And so 75% of them were 6s and 7s. Okay, so that could be isolation, it could be plaque on the tooth, it could be poor bonding, etc. So what's fun is that you can look at these things and then you can look at them by tooth number and then when they're occurring. Is it occurring right when they get their braces on? Is it occurring right after we change their first arch wires, et cetera, et cetera. And you can do things about that in your practice. So for us, primer does not go on 6s and 7s now until the doctor gets to the chair. And what that did is it took from our last 90 days of broken brackets looking like this to our last 30 days to look like this. So we went to 4 broken brackets in the past 30 days, and before that it was 20. And that is just one small example of the power of this AI and what you can do with it in your practice to change your practice overnight. And what about arch wire disengagement? So the data will show you where your arch wires are becoming disengaged. And if we think about it, it'd be most common for them to come out of the back teeth. In our practice, that was the reality. There was about 25 to 30% that were on the remaining 24 teeth, other than the lower 6s and 7s in our practice. Some of those were upper 6s and 7s, some of them were 4s and 5s, et cetera. But we're going to look at that in a little more depth. But what about an arch wire disengagement? Half the time, our patients don't even know when this happens. So I want to give you an example of what does happen now when we get an alert for this. So there's a noticeable arch wire distortion of lower right 6 and lower right 7. This automatically pops up after this patient scans, and we're like, oh, something's happened. Patient didn't call us, patient didn't know. So we have the 2 scans from week to week to where the AI picked this up. And so if we look very closely between the lower right 6 and 7, you can see that that wire is now slightly bent down and distorted, and it's coming out of the 7. There's a few things that this can cause. If it comes all the way out, it can extrude the tooth. It can make it roll in, prevent you from getting a stiffer wire in. It could go on top of the tooth. It could stay that way and put pressure to where it just kind of gets wedged and pushes the tooth back or tips the 6 forward. All things that are unfavorable and can affect our next treatment step if we don't catch this early. This isn't something that I necessarily would have seen had the patient sent me a picture. And so what are reasons? Could be patient induced. It could be that they ate the almonds or the Starburst or whatever it is, but more than likely it's because that wire was either a little bit too short to begin with. It had an inadequate cinch or a stop on the wire. Gates may have come open or a tie. That's another reason arch wire can come out, and then an occlusal interference. And so all of those items, knowing that there's so many of them that are due to things that happen in your practice instead of when the patient's at home, can improve and decrease the number of arch wire disengagements you have. So we look at these pictures in our practice and we say, why did this happen? And in this case, that wire did not have a cinch. And for me, if that would have had a cinch, that wire wouldn't have gotten disengaged. Fortunately for us, we sent an annotated picture to that patient, asked her to push it up with a pencil eraser with her thumb, and it popped right back in from home. Had she noticed and called the front desk, our front desk would have said, oh, she said something's out. They would have scheduled her at 4:30 at the end of the day when my team's ready to go home and the school bus had just unloaded and we have 8 other patients waiting. And then another example here, and then we'll move on to more fun things, but open self-ligating clips. This one was very, very eye-opening to me. So over 50% of our open clips are lower 4s and 5s. And so I had to think about this one because I was like, why? It's kind of random. That's not what I would have expected. I would have expected maybe really tight lower incisors that were rotated at the beginning, or 6s sometimes get left open. And I was like 4s and 5s, but at the beginning of treatment is when most of these were happening. And we could see that based on those timelines where it shows you like it's happening at scan 1, scan 2, et cetera. And if I think about it, a lot of times 4s and 5s, at least on people in Texas, the genetics here are that they're very rotated and the root tip is always bad. And so maybe the wire is harder to engage. Maybe I need to start in a lighter wire. Maybe we're just not focusing enough to get the last click of that gate. But almost in every single one of these situations, the gate was open when the patient left our practice. So we have an in-office scan, the patient walked out, and we got a notification the next day or later that day that the gate was open. And so for me, I say, okay, well, why are gates open? Let's take a look. So this is a patient that got their braces on June 15th last year. And their first scan is the one that's titled June 15th. And if you look, we're showing them how to do an in-person scan in our office. And if you look at the notification we got after the patient left, because it takes a short amount of time to get these reports back, it tells us that that patient had an open gate when they left our practice. So then patient scans the next week and it's still open, which means they didn't get it closed with the pencil eraser or whatever we coached them to. We'll get on the phone with them again. And then now we will ask for an additional scan right after that to make sure it got closed to our expectations. But had we not addressed this and this wire comes out, or the gate opens more and the wire comes out, that canine is one of the most misaligned teeth in this patient's mouth. If I don't get that corrected, I can't go to my next 20-minute adjustment appointment to the next wire. And I've now wasted 8 weeks of treatment because I need to re-engage this wire for that patient. And so another one that we review in our office is what's going to happen. So the tooth is rotated. We can't get it all the way in. We tried to go to a advanced wire too early. Maybe there was some glue stuck under that gate and it didn't get all the way closed. Or maybe we just don't understand what full closure is based on your thing. But it's highly unlikely that the clip is opening, at least on the brackets we use, by the patient being induced. And we know that because if you look at the exact scan number that a gate's open, it's almost always the week that they were in for their appointment. So what are some other practice trends? One other beautiful thing about Insights and the AI is that, and this is a newer thing, so I just screenshotted this from our dashboard, but it'll give you like random highlights about what's going on in your practice. So for this week, it's talking about my unseats in the child aligner protocol. So patients less than 18 years old, who is, what's going on? Well, they alerted me that there was a pretty big variation in the past 30 days of our slight unseats in our children. Well, it went down 10%. So you're thinking, okay, that's amazing. That's great, right? Well, the next trend that they showed me is that in a 30-day period, our noticeable unseats went up 2%. So maybe 8% of those unseats got better, but 2% actually got worse. And I would hate for that trend to continue. So then you can click on these and get the detail of what's going on and see if it's a certain patient, is it a certain tooth every time? Maybe it changes the way you do your setups, your staging, your attachments, and the detail doesn't end. But I love this new feature about the highlights. It's different. It's kind of crazy. I thought it'd be pretty consistent, but it's been different every time I log in. Most recently, we had a trend. We almost went to 9% overnight in open gates in like a 1 week period. And we were pretty low before that. And I'm like, what in the world's going on? And we were just letting patients walk out with open gates. And we had a couple new assistants that I just failed to coach correctly. And, but the beautiful thing is as soon as you see that, we catch it and we're able to correct that behavior much sooner than 8 weeks, or you not even knowing that happened because you just think the wires are untied and they still need that same wire next time. And had no idea the gates were open when the patient walked in. Okay, so my next favorite part about dental monitoring is communication. And I think a lot of times people might say, well, what does this have to do? What does communication have to do with dental monitoring? Like, isn't it just a scan and we're going to look at their teeth and make sure everything's okay, et cetera, et cetera. But this part of dental monitoring has been one of the most amazing things that has improved our practice, and quite honestly, probably my team's favorite part about dental monitoring. So we all know what this signal means. If we have this on our cell phones or on our laptops, we have amazing Wi-Fi, we have service, we're on this webinar right now, either driving down the road or on a laptop, we're not, dialed into the wall. We can text our friends, we can talk about, where we're going to go eat for Mother's Day, et cetera, et cetera. But if we have this signal, a lot of times this leads to frustrations because we want to communicate something, but we can't, or it's not happening how we want or the desired result. And so for us in our practice, we a lot of times, especially after COVID, felt that our communication channels were like that low signal bar. And the communication channels in our practice are team with patients, myself with the team, team with the team, and then last but not least, how I communicate with any techs that I have, with any digital monitoring, aligners, etc. And we were having a big problem after COVID where, patients didn't want to come to the office anymore, or they'd rather go run an errand, still sitting in their cars. We'd go out and update them, or maybe we wouldn't update them like I thought was happening, or someone else brought child and we just need to update parents when they're not in the practice. And so we started getting this about 8 months after COVID, parents saying, we don't know what's going on with treatment, no one updates us anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And it's frustrating because you think these things are happening, but they're not. So DM came in, and I didn't realize this was going to be such an asset of it. But what it did is it allowed me to set my expectations effectively. So my team knew exactly what type of communication I expected out of them. So we had a better patient experience. And I always say, like, what do we expect of our team and our patients, and how do we relay those expectations? Because sometimes we feel like we're on repeat. We're just recording and saying the same things over and over. And I heard a recent statistic that someone has to hear something 10 times to remember it, which is crazy, but I guess we do need to be on repeat. But one beautiful thing is that DM allows me to automate what I want, and I don't have to repeat it because it's automatically going to be relayed to our team. And I'll show you some examples of that. But the team will only respect what you inspect, and your patients will only respect what you inspect. And so if you want to set standards for communication on what you want of your patients or of your team, then you have to inspect it. And no one has time to inspect every single conversation that was had with every single patient and every single team member for the day. And so how can we automate that? And that's where DM's AI comes in. So they get the clinical triggers, and then we get to decide if we want a team instruction or a patient message sent. So what does that look like? This is communication in the past 30 days in our practice. This is also straight from their data dashboard, the Insights dashboard. We review our notifications in less than a day. We, on average, had almost 3,000 notifications that we reviewed in the past 30 days, and received around 3,000. So we reviewed more than that due to some notifications are additional scans, messages, etc. And then we sent over 3,000 messages to our patients. We received over 500 messages internally about patients' treatment within our DM dashboard. And we requested additional scans, meaning we wanted to see something after we asked someone to get something fixed from home. So I kind of consider those as saved emergency appointments off of our schedule. The most important thing that I love here is these received notifications and review notifications are team instructions. Those were communications that I had to my team and instructions, but they were all automated. And then the patient messages are all messages that normally would have come through the front desk and bogged down our front desk trying to understand something that's not their task to understand because they're not clinical assistants, probably scheduling a patient that doesn't need to be scheduled, or asking a patient if they can be called back later by an assistant to take care of something, versus an assistant having the opportunity to just get on the DM dashboard in between patients and respond to the last patient the message for the patient that they saw last. So let's take a look. This is the same patient I showed you earlier that had the open gate when they walked out of our practice. Great for training. And we had the open self-ligating clip. So what happens? I have it set up to send the patient a message. First of all, I thank them for scanning. And then I say, the clip on one of your brackets appears to be open. To keep your treatment on track, the clip needs to be closed. One of our team members will reach out to you soon to guide you on closing the clip or to schedule you a visit to get it fixed. So number one, I'm telling them something happened. Number one, I'm telling them it's important that we knew, and thanks for scanning. right? We caught it because they scanned. We're going to have to keep your treatment on track, so it will need to be fixed, but don't worry about calling us. We're going to reach out to you. And so this really helps us with our workflow in the practice of maintaining and helping all these patients that might have an issue. And then we remind them, we look forward to checking their progress on their next scan. So another example, this is another patient, and she had an in-person appointment, and she was asked to wear rubber bands. Well, of course, mom messages and says she can't remember which teeth. And of course, she also blames dad. She says she didn't tell her father, so we were both unsure. Another way of saying that is her father did not ask. I'm just kidding to all the fathers out there. You're great. And then, so we say, yes, ma'am, let me get with the assistant who saw her and I'll send it to you today. This doesn't mess up our workflow. It doesn't ask the assistant a question in the middle of treating another patient. And it probably helps us get an even better answer. So all we need to do is inside the platform, you can choose an image, you can draw on it, you can circle it, anything. And we say on the right side, her rubber bands will be exactly as the arrow shows above. And she goes in this really, really nice explanation. In addition, she doesn't just say how to wear them. My assistant says she'll have to wear them as close to 24 hours a day. She'll take them out to eat and put a fresh one afterwards. And then talks about brushing. This is amazing communication. And this makes our patients and their parents happy. After this message, I probably should screenshot it to where it fits on here, but mom is super happy. Thank you so much. On and on and on. Same patient. Abby's now going on a mission trip, so she won't be able to scan until Saturday. So she'll be late on her scan is what they're saying. We just say, thanks so much for letting us know. We'll pause her until Sunday when she gets back. Okay. So she gets back. Well, Abby gets back from her mission trip and she has 2 broken brackets and she's out of rubber bands. So mom knows that these broken brackets broke while she was not in our office. And so she's doing the face palm, right? So we say, hey, Abby, can you take an additional scan? We also messed this up a little bit by misspelling Abby's name. So something else we have to focus on when we start texting patients is that we spell their name correctly. But we say, hey, Abby, let's take a scan and see where these broken brackets are to see if you need to come in early and get them fixed, or if they can wait until your next appointment. So Abby does a scan for us, and the AI tells us there's no broken brackets. But the wire is out of both lower 7s. So I look, she's in a light 016 copper and eye wire. This is not an emergency that needs to come in at 4:30 that day because she has 2 broken brackets. This is, let's see where she is in her treatment. If she's almost due for her next appointment, why don't we just wrap this into her next adjustment? So why is this so important? Well, if you have patients that come in and they have a broken bracket, or they have aligners that aren't tracking and an attachment's often, something's not going on track, which is about 50% of patients that walk through the door. Before the patient comes into your practice, they're aware of the issue. They're informed the issue could delay treatment time. They realize we value their time and we're trying to provide a convenience to them by trying to not cost them an extra trip to the office if it's unnecessary. They're aware if their appointment will take longer than usual before they come in, because if something does need to be rebonded or fixed, they're aware that this is a service you're providing and they become appreciative. Versus when the patient gets in, they haven't told their parent they have a broken bracket. They sit down, they have 3 broken brackets. The appointment takes longer. You let mom know there were some broken brackets. She said, well, they weren't broken before, that you're always breaking things when she comes in here, even if they were broken before. For the team, this keeps their treatment time on track for the patients, and it prevents the patient taking up another appointment time for the next waiting scheduled patient. So therefore, your patients have a better experience while they're in the practice. So what I like to say is it takes reactive communication, where we are telling the parents about issues when they're in the practice, which takes a lot of time and explanation. We're doing that before the patients are ever in the practice. To proactive communication, so when they come in, they know what they're there for. Saves a lot of time and energy once they're in your doors. And the single best problem in communication is the illusion it has taken place. It eliminates that. But most importantly, and especially in Texas, It's positive, it's controlled, it's customized, it's automated, it's effective, frequent, task-driven, grammatically correct communication, except for when you misspell their name. Okay, so we've talked about these inefficiencies and some of the problems that can help our patients have better care. We understand what some of our issues are in our practice that we may not have otherwise understood at that high degree, so we can become better for our patients. We understand the communication that it can help with, either between our team members, me relaying my expectations to my team, what I want to happen if a gate opens, etc. But what does that do inside the four walls of our practice? Like, how does this change our day-to-day schedule and help us love our practice life? And so what I can say is the quality of care of our patients has dramatically increased because I do see everything, and I'm alerted if something's wrong, and we can analyze these issues. It's the patient experience increased because of communication, and not most importantly, but just as importantly, our team experience has improved. So what does scheduling reimagined look about? Well, the reality is that it's not about you, the doctor. I'm in a small town that I was born and raised in, and when patients come in, every conversation is usually about a volleyball game last night, or who knows who, or how I'm related to their cousin, or just something that's very personal. It's very easy to have personal conversations in my town. And if any patients may feel like, or any doctor feels like, well, these patients love me, like we're all friends, I know everyone, I would be the prime example of that. My patients love me more when they don't have to take off work to come see me. So it's not about you, it's about them. And you can actually have a better relationship with your patients when you get to monitor them every single week from home, rather than every 8 to 10 weeks in your practice. So we like to call this dynamic scheduling. And I'm going to go through a case real quick. This is an initial bonding into the patient's next visit, which was 4 months later. They have Ultima brackets, 14 copper night ties, and they'll have an RPE. So patient comes in. She has deep curvous B. She has bilateral crossbite, crowding, and just a side view here showing her curvous B. And then her narrow arch the day we delivered the expander and put the brackets on, and a little bit of her crowding there. So what happens? That day, she came in and got everything done. So we add something to what we call a to-do list inside the dental monitoring dashboard. That to-do list item says, once upper and lower wires go passive, have patient come back for an arch wire change and check for changing wires. And then we put the assistant's initial and the date. Okay, that's input. We also have a scheduled action added, which is a team instruction, to have myself check an expansion of the RPE and check to see if the patient needs to continue or stop turning. Okay, and we're going to have that go off on the 28th, which is 2 weeks from the day that we put in the expander. So on the 22nd, that's her first scan, 1 week after she got everything done. Everything looks great. She's turning, nothing's broken, hygiene's great because it says, thank you for scanning. We want to share that you're doing great. Okay, so we didn't have any issues there. Then 2 week instructions. So patient scans week 2. Our braces patients scan every single week. We get an automated team alert, which was the one that we put in the day that the patient got their expander. We pre-scheduled that to alert us today, and a custom patient message. So the automated team alert that shows up for our team to review, and they'll tell me, says, have Dr. C check expansion of RPE and check to see if the patient needs to continue turning or stop. Then the patient gets a message from us, and this is a message that we actually typed. Hi, Leah, Dr. Carter has reviewed your scans and wants you to turn 14 more times, once a night for 14 days, and then stop, and we will check again to see if we would like you to continue or not. As a reminder, when you're turning, make sure you rock the key all the way back and pull straight down out of the hole to complete the turn. And that must have been something I asked them to reinforce because I must not have seen very much turning. So either they just didn't do it every night or they were trying to unturn it when they were pulling the key out. So another week later, she's scanning, everything's going great. And then that second week later, because we've reset it for 2 more weeks, have me check again, right? And this is automated. So they come find me and I quickly check it, or they send me an email to check it. So then we keep going. So she's turning and it's opening a little bit, and I'm okay with that. I wish it was opening faster, but instead of having in-person RPE checks, they're all done through DM. So this is January 7th. And by the way, the patient's still turning here. It's opening slowly. We can see the expander. We're going to show you that in a minute. But we get a notification that a self-lighting clip opened upper right 5. Okay. So we let her know that it's open and ask her to use a pencil eraser to close it. This will keep our treatment on track. So every bracket's engaged. Then we start noticing at week 7 that hygiene has really gone south, and we coach her. You know, we want you to brush better, take care of your teeth. It looks like maybe she didn't brush before this scan. And remember, the patient still has not been in office. Then now we're finally to week 22, and I have a notification pop up automatically that the arch wires have gone passive. So the AI can detect if the teeth move less than a certain amount between consecutive scans, then the arch wire is passive. And that will detect active open coils, power closing chains, everything is included in that passivity. So I get notifications that her wires are passive. Sometimes they go passive different dates, and we let her know you're finally due for your appointment. And what I didn't include in here is on February 14th, I think, or 13th is when she finally stopped turning her expander. And that probably would have been like 5 RPE checks in person that we saved. So the day that she got her braces on to the next in-person appointment, her RPE looks great. She's ready for her next wires, and it's a proactive, predictable appointment. So when she comes in, our schedule is going to go exactly how we want it to go. Not only that, I look at this and I'm very impressed by how much of the curve of speed was leveled just by letting those wires work. How much crowding was alleviated via the expander and, brackets. My philosophy is there. And then I'm going to go to the next slide here. You can really see the curve of speed. And we haven't even bonded the lower 7s yet. Her hygiene isn't perfect, but it would have been a lot worse had we not corrected it when we weren't checking her in the office. And then you can perfectly see her expansion there. And if I go back to her first one again, you can see that her bite, if you look at the top smaller pictures, you can see that she's out of cross bite. And these are all the pictures we look at to just do our RPE checks and our appliance checks via the scanning. So how do workflows go into this? And workflows are probably one of the most hardest, or probably the hardest thing for anyone to implement in their practice. But workflows and processes and systems to me are the most important thing in our practices if we want to have good communication, everything. And DM just makes workflows for you. So this is a sheet we use. This is our braces checklist. We, go through everything. What are we doing today? Everything on the far left-hand side for you guys is, the pre-filled information. And then the bottom part is their elastic grade and OH grade when they show up. And then what are we doing today? What are we doing next time? And then the other side is like our goals. These are the goals straight from dental monitoring. Goals are things that dental monitoring, if you want it to monitor, will as soon as you click the button, and you can tell it when you want to know if a goal's met or if it's not met. Do we need to exclude anything? Did we intentionally leave a bracket off that was broken? Did we intentionally drape a wire under a bracket? And if I don't tell the system that, it's going to say, oh, the wire came out. So what are some exclusions we might need? And then team instructions are specific alerts that are time stamped. We want to check that RPE in 2 weeks. We want to check that herpes activation in 8 weeks, or that reverse curve. And then to-dos in our practice are used for braces patients, and they're essentially our next visit notes. So as soon as a goal is met or a team instruction is fulfilled, we go to that to-do list and we see what are we scheduling this patient for. Here's our aligner sheet, very similar, but a little bit different. You'll notice that there's no to-do notes for them, but instead we have protocols. So instead we go, what are the protocol changes we need for our aligner patients? Well, what are the protocols? So this is our check-in and delivery form for aligners. When aligners arrive in our practice, this is completely filled out before the patient is scheduled. And I sign off on them. So they're filled out by somebody else in the practice, and then I approve them, and I do that just because sometimes I throw a curveball and it takes less than a minute to do. And I do them in between patients on patient days, or find like a 1 hour lunch period to go through them. So the most important part is the part in the red. For those of you using dental monitoring for your aligners or not, you should be. So we call it AO Go, Alyssa Orthodontics on the Go. And we say, okay, are we starting DM for the first time? That's DMI, DM initial, or are we stopping them and restarting them or pausing them, etc.? Are we scheduling IPR? And if so, what tray? And you also notice there's a little area over there that says the IPR real or fake. So if they're spacing a huge diastema, sometimes I'll put like 0.1 millimeters of IPR, and my team just knows that's fake, but they go ahead and chart this in case someone new, or, just so their brain doesn't have to think about it. When are we starting elastics? It's very rare for me to start elastics at tray 1. I usually wait until my mechanics and elastics aren't fighting each other. So if I'm proclining upper incisors, I don't want to start class 2s yet. When are we checking elastics? What tray numbers do I want to check them at? If you're overcorrecting a curvus B, I don't do this as much anymore as I used to, so I don't fill this one out as much anymore. But when do I want to check that bite opening to see if I got what I wanted? And if I did, I don't want to continue opening the bite. I would rather just do an early refinement. I always also check for early refinement. So if I'm aligning teeth, I create space between them to align them. And before I retract and close all of the space on those trays, I want to know. I want to know what tray is that happening at, because if I can already tell I need a refinement, that's the time to refine, rather than waiting until you close all the space and then say you want refinement and reopen it. And then check for final, debond if I think we're pretty much there. So those are all things that have been modified in how I set up my aligner cases. I used to say only do IPR at stages 11, 21, 31, 41, because I knew I was giving my patients 10 trays, and so, or only add attachments at these stages. And now I don't have to only have like sets of 10 trays. I can have 53 trays and it doesn't matter. I can have 21 trays. I can have my IPR at tray 24 if that's when it's best. But it's all going to be together. It has saved us a lot of time in our setups from making sure those things were accurate, but also chair side, because this is put in the beginning. And then as soon as those alerts pop up on our dashboard, we take care of them. And then aligner check-in and delivery form. So once the patient's scheduled, we have a pre-delivery appointment kind of thing that we go through to make sure we're not wasting that patient's time when they're in the practice. That can all be done before the patient shows up. And then we have a little delivery appointment list that they go through when the patient's here. And then post-delivery, we take anything that we put in this AO Go protocol modifications, and we put it into the protocols in DM. We change the actual protocols by aligner number. So instead of being reactive in nature with our aligner patients, we move to proactive in nature and manage our time better. So for me, increasing the value of my time with communication, inefficiencies, better patient care, and definitely last but not least, our workflows have all been because of the AI that we have with DM. So we've built our practice around that and continue to, and I get more excited every day that we learn something new. So what I want to do is use some gauge average numbers, and coming up in the next month or two, I'll probably need to reach out to them to see if they'll give me updated numbers. We do use gauge in our practice, but the average value per visit in orthodontic practice is around $300. The number of visits per patient is around 18, 60 visits per doctor day, 174 doctor days per year, and average treatment time is 27 months, which is a little bit disturbing because I think most orthodontists treatment plan probably 18 months on average, maybe 24, but I don't think most practices average 27, even though that's the national average in treatment time. So kind of eye-opening there to say, what should we be telling our patients? So if you take the full price of a dental monitoring scan box pro and you take the average treatment time of 27 months and you only order one box and pay the highest price, you pay around $392, $400 a patient, per patient to have dental monitoring. The beautiful thing about dental monitoring, though, is that as it helps you become more efficient with your treatment, helps you catch these things early so you don't keep patients in braces an extra 8, 12, 16 weeks every time something happens, it gets less expensive for you because the monthly fee that you don't need when the patient's not being treated for 27 months anymore goes away. So you can see that as you go down like 8%, you go down about $30 or $25. If you go down 20%, you're going down about $70, $60, and then in half. So the average practice has, on average, almost 11,000 appointments a year, if we use the gauge data. If you get that down to 16.5 visits on average instead of 18, you can save almost 900 appointments a year. 900 appointments with on average 60 appointments per day is 15 doctor days freed up from your schedule. That's only an 8% increase in efficiency in 1.5 visits. The value per visit will go up $5 even after you take into account the full cost of a dental monitoring box per patient. If you can become 20% more efficient with your appointments and you can get that patient down to only 14 in-office visits, you will clean up 40 doctor days in your practice, and your value per visit will go up to $362, which is an increase in $63 for every patient that walks through your practice every single day. And then if you get real ambitious, and Chris Benson, is a huge advocate of this digital world we're entering, and I respect him dearly, and he does believe we could become 50% more efficient with our practices and our patients' appointments. You could save half of your visits, like 5,394, and save around 90 doctor days a year. So your value per visit would go up to $574 per patient. And that's double of the current value per visit almost. Your increased value per patient will go up by $2,400. This is the value of your time per patient. And your increased value in your practice could go up $1.5 million. So how can you create the proactive practice? And for me, that's finding the abundance. And to do that, you can use the AI to work as, it's smarter than us and it can do more for us. And it works overnight and it never quits and it doesn't complain and it doesn't argue with team members and it does what we ask it to do. And that's what's allowed me to grow. And my team, despite some initial resistance, now would not want to allow me to practice without it. It's all about your time because it's the most valuable thing in our practice. And so the value of time truly in the average orthodontic practice is what you see on the screen right now. And that is the 15 doctor days, the 40 doctor days, or the 90 doctor days, which can create this opportunity for you without changing your current schedule. Time is money. So be proactive rather than reactive. Find your abundance rather than your balance. And think of serving your patients as a privilege rather than a duty. What can you do for them that's better? For me, that's defining growth and living our practice life so our patients can live it too.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Wonderful presentation. And in fact, I wanted to point out one of the things that I noticed in your presentation that I had not seen before, and it struck me as something very unique, was what you were really just showing in your financial graphs there is the all-in monitoring cost and how that decreases over time. And I think a lot of people get caught up in, okay, what is it going to cost for me to monitor a patient all in? but you've done the work to say, hey, if it's doing what it's supposed to do and help you become more efficient, that all-in cost is going to decrease over time. And it's not just a bulk discount or a volume discount. It's what I call the byproduct discount.
Absolutely.
So I'm so glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah, I love that part. And I love byproduct. That's the perfect term. It's the indirect effect. I love that it shows like just by becoming 8%, I always say more efficient, but I really think the right term there is more respectful to your patients, because their time is worth just as much as ours. But becoming 8% more respectful to your patients by saving them those trips, whether it's because you caught something early, discovered the inefficiencies, became better orthodontist, whatever it is, already pays for itself. And that's super easy to do.
For sure. We do have a few questions that have come in. It looks like about a half a dozen. So if we could take a few minutes, they're all great questions, all very commonly asked questions, but love to hear your response on these. So the first one is from Jennifer, and it's how often are you having your braces patients scan, and how often is the DM software finding an issue, such as broken brackets, a door open, etc.?
So our braces patients scan every 7 days, no matter what, just every 7 days. If they're going to be out of town and they let us know, or etc., we can do that. The only time that doesn't happen is, or that we find issues with this, I'll go ahead and address this now because I'm sure it's on the question list. We have people that won't scan. Well, we have found that they'll be really good, and then basketball season will start, and they were in football season, and now their games are a different day, their practices are a different day, and so we say, okay, well, is there a different day that works better for you now? And we just pause their monitoring for a couple of days to get them on a new track. But it's supposed to be every 7 days consistently, and I wouldn't do it any other way. I think it's the most intentional schedule. There are some people that'll say, oh, scan them once a month or etc. I want to know within 7 days if something's gone wrong. I'd like to know every day, but I'm not going to ask them to scan every day. So every 7 days, so we know if something's going wrong, if something's broken, we can catch it without having too much of an adverse effect, and hopefully be able to stay right where we are in treatment. In addition, when we tried every other week right at first, patients couldn't remember if they scanned last week or this week, and they get alerts, and I think it's easier to do every week.
Absolutely.
Oh, and how often is it finding broken things? All the time. It finds everything. It finds things that I can't see with my eyes. So it'll tell me a bracket's broken, and I'll be like, I don't know. And then sure enough, it's broken, because it's just the AI can see that it's a couple, like 0.01 millimeters lifted from the tooth, and I didn't see that. So.
And actually, the great thing you pointed out, there's really only the three notifications that say everything's good. It's braces are good, aligners are good, hygiene's good. Outside of that, there's always going to be an issue of something. But the great thing about DM Insights, that's one of those statistics that it will show you is what percentage of my scans get a, satisfactory condition of the braces.
Right. And what's crazy is it's really only around, like, I don't remember what the national average is, but I know it's less than 70, maybe less than 60%. Get their braces are perfectly fine every scan, which means 40% in the system, or 30%, whatever it is, have something that you want to be alerted about.
And so the next question from Samina, and I apologize to anyone if I mispronounce your name, but it relates to that. So how do you find the time to check all these scans?
I spend about 10 minutes a week on dental monitoring, and that's not an exaggeration. First of all, my team deserves all the credit in the world. They believe in it, and they see the vision, and they take care of our patients too, and they take care of me. So they are the ones, like the AI, we set up our protocols to alert my team what we want to know about every patient. And we kind of have like our general protocol set. And then as things happen, when a broken bracket happens, it doesn't just say to my team like, oh, lower right 4 is broken. I have told the system what I want my team to do if a bracket's broken. And then I've told my system what I want them to do if a gate's open. And they get that message right below the issue. And then they have to do those things. Most of the questions I get, like I said, about 10 minutes a week are check expansion, check reverse curves. And if I, for some reason, wrote, ask if I want to go into this wire, or something's crazy is going on. But for the most part, everything can be done with my team, because if everything's good between appointments, then we've proactively said what we're going to do next time. So they go to that to-do note and they say, okay, next visit, we're scheduling them for a 30-minute arch wire change, and these are the wires we're putting in. And or we're scheduling them for a CBCT and repos for 60 minutes, and etc. So I don't need to look at those patients if nothing's off track.
Perfect. Actually, you're so good at creating these natural segues, as if you saw the next question on the list. But Robert asked a question kind of relating to that too, and it's an example you showed when you were showing the RPE case and the specific doctor instruction for you to check to make sure, see if turning is still necessary. But where do you put the instruction to the team? How do you create those?
Yeah, so you can go to right on the patient's dashboard when we have it pulled up chair side. For the first visit, there's something that's like add team instruction, and you click on that button and you can put in what you want that instruction to be. So it's, have Dr. Robert, I don't know who you said, I think you said Robert,
Right.
expansion. And a lot of times now we'll even put like RPE placed this day and told to turn whatever. And then it gives you an option to say what date you want that to pop up. So my team will just click on 2 weeks from the exact date. And that's for initial every single RPE patient, unless I say otherwise. When that programs the system to automatically pop up an alert on your dashboard that your team checks every day that says, hey, today's the day you said you wanted to check that RP. So they'll come tell me, or they'll send me a quick email. I get on the dashboard and check it, and I say either, please let the patient know to stop turning. And then we continue to wait for our wires to go passive, or we wait 8 weeks to do an appliance check, and we'll reset it for 8 weeks. Make sure expansion's holding well, whatever it is. Or I'll say, hey, they need to turn for another week. Can you alert for me to check after their next scan? And then they just copy and paste it and put the new date in.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And it kind of an add-on layer to answer that question about how to create those instructions to the team. You kind of went the specific to that patient route, which is certainly available within the patient treatment card, but also from a higher level, those instructions can be created under the configuration at the top of the dashboard. There's a configuration, and then that will allow you to change quick replies and patient instructions. But there'll be a third tab called team instruction, and you can create those so they apply every time this happens for all patients to move forward. So that's another way to do that.
For every patient that has an open gate, there's an automatic reply that we've built in that tells my team what I want them to do. And that will automatically, if the system detects an open gate, the system pulls to the dashboard, the open gate and the tooth number. And then right below it, it pulls what I have programmed that I want the team to do. So I don't have to do anything. It's all built in.
Definition of efficiency, make the decision once. John asked, and you may have touched on this, but just for clarification, I know you said you have your braces patients scan weekly, but just to clarify, you have your aligner patients also scan weekly?
So we start out weekly at 7 days. But we've had to change our verbiage to not say you'll scan every 7 days, because if the tray does not fit that day, they will have to wear it a few extra days. So now it's your first scan will be in 7 days. And from that point, we'll tell you if we want you to go to your next tray for 7 days, or if we want you to stay in that tray a few extra days. So it starts with 7 days, but it could be every 7 days for the entirety. It could be 9 days every now and then, or 11 days, because it's every 2 to 3 days after that. Or what's even cooler now is the AI can detect if a patient has 3 consecutive 7 days that go through and the aligners fit perfect, then we can put in our system that we want them to automatically go down to 6-day wear. And then you can go, if they have 3 consecutive goes at 6 days, we can go to 5 days. And if we start having issues there, you can always jump back up to 6 days. But yeah, and you can also do it the opposite. If they have 3 consecutive no-goes, you can have them start wearing their trays for 8 days each and see if that helps. So we start at 7 days.
Okay. And that's a fairly recently released new feature within the last couple of months called adaptive scan frequency. Because before that was all having to be done manually, and now you can preset it
Correct.
to adjust according to your parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool.
Cool.
How do you account for the reduced doctor days and still see the number of consults to have the practice continue the same productivity?
So my thoughts on this are, if your consult chairs are full on the days that you have your patients and you need more consult days, open consult days, start days, whatever you want to call them. Don't have full chairs and tell patients that they can't come in for 3 weeks because your consult chairs are full or whatever. You need to have those days open, but those could easily also kind of be combined with admin days where you can get other work done between if you don't need to. I just prefer the days that I'm like in the clinic hands deep to be in the clinic. And you know, Sean knows this. He knows if it's a clinic day for me, I don't like to look at my phone in the middle of the day. I don't answer emails usually those days. You know, I'm in the clinic and I'm hanging out, and because I'm not with my team every day of the week, so I gotta love them and be with them and address anything they've had come up. I do have time to kind of do those things, but I just find myself with the patients and the team. If I need more days opened, I usually schedule them on days like today where I'm up here and I'm just getting other stuff done. I'm working on Spark, or I need to meet with my TCs or my front or my clinic for a training. And then we can throw in a few patients to accommodate them.
Perfect. And I actually appreciate the attention to detail and the math on this, because, you know, they're taking your number of 90 days potentially saved and thinking, well, if we had 6 of those consult slots per day, you know, that's 540 consult opportunities. But as you said, you could create consult days or start days.
Yeah.
Those 90 days off doesn't have to stay as off days.
Correct. You can also hire another TC, but only if you have the chair space to add patients into. So we've also decreased our doctor days. We've also gone from over 100 patients a day down to about 60 on average as well. So we've saved a lot more days than what we've closed. But we have room to add another TC if I needed to, and have another assistant come in that just does same day starts. So every clinic will be different on that based on your capacity of chairs and things like that.
Oh yeah, and it looks like we'll probably have a room or time for one more question, and I apologize if I don't get to anyone, but Rachel asked, for the people who use dental monitoring, it's easy to see the value, but how do you deal with the referral sources who are uncomfortable with this new technology or prefer the old school every 6 to 8 week appointment?
For us, we don't advertise that they don't have to come in as much or that we're not going to see them as much. That's not, to me, that's not the philosophy. For me, it's see patients only when they need to be seen, and then take care of things when things go wrong. So that way the saving of appointments to me is because you're eliminating the waste. I would say one of the best things we've done is I have a couple referring doctors that I'm treating, or their kids, and they're like, wow, they're kind of amazed. And probably set up a lunch and learn for education, and be careful about the words you choose. I mean, DM for me is a practice life, and if you put the patients first, you do want to save them time, you want to save them appointments, but it's not about so you don't have to see them as much. It's more about the patients don't have to see you as much. The patients aren't coming for it. Like, we don't have check appointments. They're gone. And before, patients could have multiple of those during treatment. And I think explaining that to the dentist, like, hey, they don't get their colors changed, or we don't just check their aligners, and we don't have to back up in wires, or we don't have to back up in trays anymore. So they could be out of their braces sooner, which is better for their hygiene. But you need to know your practice and where it's helping your practice. Don't just go make something up, and then sit with them and maybe open your dashboard with them one day and kind of go through what it looks like.
Right. I've heard so many, you may have shared it with me, so many of your peers, other key opinion leaders that I've talked to have talked about this relationship with the referring dentist and other specialists. And like, you know, they just may not understand the level of insight that we get from this dental monitoring report and the scans. And so when I'm able to sit down and share that with them, or email them photos, or email them screenshots of hygiene reports, you know, they really appreciate that we're kind of taking that care to the next level, which can, you know, I think can only help that referral relationship. So.
Yeah. And they care a lot about recession too. So if you have a patient that has caught recession on, where you can show them that you're actively monitoring it, that's really cool.
Outstanding. Well, thank you again, Dr. Carter, for your awesome presentation. You're awesome as always. And thank you so much for your insightful responses to these questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question or comment. We do apologize again for not being able to answer everyone in the time allowed, but we do have those documented here in the chat box. I know I speak for Dr. Alyssa Carter as well as everyone behind the scenes when I say that you all have given us the gift of your time today, for which we are very grateful. Please do plan to join us on our next scheduled DM Connect webinar, which will be Friday, June 16th, on the subject of scalability of braces and aligners with dental monitoring. And until then, have a blessed remainder of your day, wherever you are in the world, and be well.
Thank you, Sean. And I would not miss the next one. Dr. Barry Benson is awesome. So I can't wait to listen to it.
Absolutely. I agree. Have a great day, all.